Hello and welcome everybody, Crispy here again. Today I want to go through a quick build and configuration for raiding using Demonology for our Warlock, and this will work in normal, LFR, Heroic, Mythic. So let's jump right in. We want to take a look first at your Conduits. So the main conduits for Demonology are Born of Blood and Tyrant Soul. If you only have two empowered conduits at the moment, then just use these two. They are the most powerful and definitely buff your Hand of Gul'dan and Tyrant significantly, so your major damage output is definitely increased. You can see a noticeable difference. If you do have a third one empowered, then go with the Fel Commando, who a lot of people look at Carnivorous Stalkers as well as an alternative, but for overall raid damage, including the trash packs and everything else that you're going to be doing in a raid, the RNG involved with Carnivorous Stalkers means you just can't be sure every time that you're going to get that extra bite. So Fel Commando, quite assured, and does decent damage. So that's the conduits. Let's jump over and take a look at your talents. So the talents we want for setting up a raid for Demonology are: you want to choose Demonic Strength for your Fel Guard. You want the Summon Vile Fiend. It's a very short cooldown and lines up with every single tyrant that you cast. Grimoire is excellent. It's on a 2-minute cooldown, so it lines up with other cooldowns as well as when you get every other tyrant. So that is very useful and powerful. Demonic Consumption, of course, because it buffs our commander, our tyrant. As far as stats go and legendaries, let's look at the legendary. Since we want to get our tyrant out as often as possible as our major DPS cooldown, we want Wilfred's. By far the best, because it reduces every soul shard you spend, reduces a cooldown. So from 1.5 minutes, which is what it normally is, you can get it down to 1 minute in general, which means that your Vile Fiend, you might have to hold it for 15 seconds or so, but it will line up with every single tyrant that you have, and then every other tyrant that you have will line up with your Fel Guard. As far as stats go, haste is the most important thing for Demonology. Again, that ties into how fast you can get your tyrant back up. So more costs of soul shards means more chance of reducing the time to your tyrant. So haste, stack it. Crit is the next one, very important as well. Get as much as you can, depending on your gear. After that, mastery and versatility will just fall into place based on your gear. I would definitely emphasize that you guys use the web GUI for simulating what your best gear is. Yours might look a little bit different than mine. I've got 32% haste, 14% crit, and 40% mastery, with about 5.5% verse. So that works for me as the best single target, and for the raid it's also about single target. If we look at the trinkets that I run, I suggest Ruby. If you have that, it is fantastic. It is a huge chunk of crit, and for raids it's particularly absolutely optimal, because as a raid boss gets lower in health towards the end of a fight, a boss fight, you're going to get a chance to use it and get a huge chunk of crit back to yourself for 16 seconds, which is pretty phenomenal. Then in your other trinket slot, I use a stat stick with the gland, which gives me 124 secondary stat, which in this case would be, my highest one is haste, so I get that buffed as well. You can use the crit one from Kel'Thuzad as well, which is pretty decent. It doesn't proc quite as reliably, or stack quite as reliably, but I find that I like the haste, so this is what I run with. So guys, let's take a look at what that looks like on a rotation on a dummy and see what we can do. So let's call up our Tyrant or our Wrath card. And the rotation is going to be you cast your Demon Bolt 3.5 seconds before the pull timer expires, then Soul Rot, go with a Felguard, Vile Fiend, do a couple of Demon Bolts to get up to 5, cast your Dreadstalkers, pop your Ruby, a couple more Shadow Bolts to try and get back up to 5. By the time your Ruby hits you with the buff, you cast your Imps out with the Gul'dan, do your Tyrant, follow that up with the Demonic Strength talent that you have for your Tyrant or Wrath Guard. And then you just build shards through Shadow Bolts, and Hand of Gul'dan will be your spender, and you'll just keep going through that rotation using Soul Rot every minute, and Vile Fiend lines up with your Tyrant every minute or so. So hopefully you get some procs, a little bit RNG, but hopefully you get some procs and you can reduce the Tyrant down to about a minute and use that Vile Fiend with it. And then the second time around, another minute, and you get your Felguard back up. So let's just take a look at what the rotation looks like. Now, I don't have any pots, flasks, or food on, so let's just see what this looks like as it is. Let's reset this for you guys. Here we go. And you're just going to build. And there it is. So we'll get this out. Just keep building. They look like they're about to expire. We can do that. And you can see that it's a pretty solid burst, and it remains pretty consistent. So it's a great way of getting some solid burst, even when you're out of lust, and it still manages to pull ahead. So yeah, that's basically it, guys. Just wanted to show you. You can see my Vile Fiend is back up. I'm just waiting. If I proc this a few more times, a few more Demon Bolts, that'll reduce that down. The Tyrant will be ready. It'll come back up with the Dreadstalkers, and I'll have Soul Rod available this go. So staying over a burst 10k probably easily with my item level, and no flask, no food, none of that, and then consistently outside of last year able to maintain a decent DPS, very competitive with the other classes. So that's it for today. Thanks very much for watching, guys. Be sure and subscribe, and I'll catch you later.